We're ready now to implement our dial-in conferencing configuration. You may remember back in the beginning, we set up one of those simple URLs, https dialin.interfaceTTlabs.com. So the dial-in page is accessible internally, it's accessible externally as well. And the purpose of this is to give people the ability to come over here and see which conference dial-in numbers are available. So what can I dial at the PSTN to get into the audio conference? And also, it's a web page where I can reset my PIN number if I'm an internal user. So people in the outside world, even your own employees that are dialing in from the outside, can get the actual phone numbers that are needed. It also tells you the DTMF controls as well. So if I've dialed into an audio conference, there's different codes I can type into the keypad on my phone to maybe mute or unmute my microphone and do some other things as well. So what we want to do is we want to populate the information to put the conference dial-in numbers out there and configure the policies. So let's take a look at how to do that. So we'll go into conferencing here in the Lync control panel. Notice that if we go over to dial-in access number, we have no dial-in access numbers by default. So in order to create a dial-in access number, you have to first associate a region with one of your dial plans, because you might have regions all over the country that will have different local access numbers for dial-in conferencing. So you want to give people the ability to do a local call when they're dialing into a conference instead of incurring a long distance call and just having one number in say, Los Angeles. So what we'll do here is we'll go over to voice routing first and configure our Phoenix dial plan. So I'm going to double click on the Phoenix dial plan. I'm going to say the dial-in conferencing region is Phoenix. And I can call this whatever I want, but I'll just use Phoenix because that's descriptive. Say okay to that and then go ahead and commit that. So again, I might have 4 or 5 different dial plans here for locations all over the country. So I'm just doing this one now, Phoenix. And let's go over to conferencing at this point. And now we'll create a new dial-in access number for Phoenix. The display name, or the display number, I should say, would be +1, maybe 602. So I'll format it a little bit more nicely than normal. 301-6001. Display name, Phoenix, dial-in. And then I need to actually set the number here. So in E164 format, so tel +1 602 301 6001. And then I can also specify a SIP URI. So to dial into the conference, a federated user could use a SIP URI, or somebody internally can access it that way as well. We do have a meeting launcher that we'll see with the Lync web app as well, but let's go ahead and fill this out. So I'm going to do SIP dial-in. We'll do phx_dial-in at interfaceTTlabs.com, and then we'll associate that to our current front-end pool. Primary language. Now notice here we have a bunch of different languages, so I might have a dial plan in a different country. So I could configure a dial-in access number for Mexico, for example, and then we could associate this language as the primary. And when you dial into a conference on the Mexico dial-in access number, the audio service would be talking to you in Spanish. So that's one option there. So of course I want to do English here for Phoenix. Don't need a secondary. And then I want to specify my region. So if I go ahead and hit add, there's my region Phoenix that's associated with my Phoenix dial plan. And then I'll go ahead and commit that. Let me come over to conferencing policy here and notice that we have a global policy that has some settings. So I'm going to create a new user-based policy. Notice you can also do a site-based as well. So we'll have a specific user-based policy and then kind of a global one with some default settings here. So in the user policy, I'm going to make this one a little bit more broad. So we'll just do it, we'll call it conference VIPs. We're basically going to give these guys the ability to do some more detailed and some larger meetings. So we'll say instead of the default of 250 people in a meeting, we'll let them do 500. And we'll go ahead and enable recording of meetings. And we'll allow federated and anonymous participants to record. So notice there's all kinds of things you can control in here. You can control the ability to enable data collaboration, which would be doing things like transferring files and things like that, or sharing out screen content, annotations, polls, things like that. Application sharing as well. Maybe we want to allow federated users to be able to share out their presentation on their desktop or something like that. You can enable peer-to-peer recording as well. So just a few things here. What I want to do is go over and commit this policy once I've created it. And then I can assign that specific conference policy to an end user. The way I would do that would be to go over to the user, say we go into Erica and specify under the conference policy, conference VIPs. So remember, if it's set to automatic, that's going to be your global policy. If I have a site-based policy, it'll just automatically happen for the user. And you can always determine which policy is going to be granted. If you click on view here, it'll show you exactly which one is going to be applied to the user. So in this case, it's easy because I'm explicitly defining conference VIPs for this user. Let's go ahead and commit that. Let's also go back over to the web browser to the dial and access page and do a refresh. Notice that now we get the conferencing dial-in number for Phoenix. So if I had multiple sites, multiple dial plans, different regions, they'd all show up here in a list. And I could even have multiple numbers in one city as well. So if I had a DID that maybe Phoenix, Tucson, something like that, or I could have 3 different local numbers in Phoenix. So it just depends. So you have a lot of options here. That's a process of setting up the dial and access numbers and modifying your policies. As we go forward, we'll look at setting up conferences and configuring all of the options available.